Why do I feel like I don't belong? This is something I hear from so many clients, and if this is something you feel, I want you to understand that this is not random. This is not a flaw in you. This is something that has meaning, and it usually begins much earlier in life than you realize. Because the feeling of not belonging is not just a thought, it's a belief. A belief that is formed through emotional experience, often in childhood. When a child feels unseen, unsupported, emotionally disconnected or alone, they don't have the ability to think psychologically about what is happening. Instead, they feel their way into a conclusion. And that conclusion often becomes something like, I don't belong. Or even more deeply, I don't exist. And because this was felt in the body, it does not live in the mind alone. It lives in your nervous system. It lives in your body. And that is why so many people struggle to think their way out of it. Because this is not a thinking problem. This is an emotional and embodied experience. Now, what most people do with this feeling is they avoid it. And that makes complete sense. Because the feeling underneath not belonging is grief. It is loss. It is the pain of disconnection. And that can feel overwhelming. So we develop ways of not feeling it. Sometimes that looks like addictive behaviors or addiction to substances. But more often it looks like something much more subtle, like overthinking, overanalyzing, trying to work it all out in your head, constantly searching for answers, trying to fix yourself. And while that can feel productive, it is often a distraction because thinking about the feeling is safer than actually feeling the feeling. And what happens over time is that the original sadness gets buried, but it does not go away. It starts to leak out in other ways through behavior, through relationships, through a general sense of unease, and very often through the body. Many clients describe a heaviness or tightness in the upper chest, a kind of ache that sits there and does not quite go away. And this is important because that sensation is often unresolved grief, whereas anxiety tends to show up in the gut, more activated, more restless, more about what might happen next. But grief is different. Grief sits, it lingers, it holds. And if we mislabel grief as anxiety, we end up trying to calm something that actually needs to be felt. So the work here is not about getting rid of the feeling. It is about beginning to turn towards it. And that starts with a very simple but powerful shift away from the story in your head and into the experience in your body. Instead of asking yourself, what am I thinking? You begin to ask, what am I feeling in my body right now? And at first this can feel unfamiliar, especially if you were someone who is used to analysing. But gently bringing your attention to your body and noticing where the feeling sits can begin to change your relationship with it. You might notice the tightness in your chest, and instead of moving away from it, you stay with it. You get curious about it. You might even ask yourself, what does this feeling feel like? Is it heavy? Is it hollow? Is it tight? And as you stay with it, something begins to shift because you are no longer abandoning that part of yourself. You are beginning to connect with it. And this is where the work deepens, because that feeling in your body is not just about the present moment. It is often connected to a much younger part of you. So you might ask yourself, how old does this feeling feel? And very often what comes up is not an adult experience, but something much younger. And this is where we begin to connect with what we might call the inner child, the part of you that originally felt this sense of not belonging. And for many people, this is the first time they have ever turned towards that part of themselves with awareness. Because up until now, the pattern has been to move away, to distract, to leave that experience. But now something different is happening. You are staying. And this is where another part of you becomes really important. And that is what I would call your inner nurturing parent. Because as you begin to feel these deeper emotions, there is also often another voice that shows up, the inner critic, the part of you that says, this is pointless, or you're just overreacting, or just get on with it. And it's really important to understand that this voice is not the truth. It is a protective part of you that learned a long time ago that it was safer not to feel. But now you are developing the ability as an adult to respond differently, to stay with the feeling and to bring a sense of care towards yourself. You might begin to ask, what do I need right now? And very often the answer is simple. I need to be alone with this. And in that moment, you begin to create a completely new experience, because the original pain of not belonging was not just about being left. It was about having no one to help you process what you felt. And now you are beginning to offer that to yourself. And this is where the real shift begins, because belonging is no longer something you are waiting to receive from others. It becomes something you begin to create within yourself. Each time you stay with your feelings instead of leaving them, each time you notice that inner critic and choose not to follow it, each time you bring a sense of care and presence to your own experience, you're building a different relationship with yourself. And over time, this begins to change the belief. Not through positive thinking, but through lived experience. The belief I don't belong slowly becomes a part of me feels like I don't belong. And then something new starts to emerge. I'm learning to belong to myself. And this is what I would call coming home to yourself. It is the shift from abandoning yourself when it hurts to staying with yourself. And the more you do this, the less alone you begin to feel. Not because your external world has changed, but because your internal relationship has. And interestingly, as that happens, your relationship with others often begins to change as well, because you are no longer seeking belonging from a place of emptiness. You are relating from a place of connection within yourself. And that is where more authentic relationships can begin. So if you have been living with the feeling that you don't belong, I want you to understand this. This is not the end of your story. This is the beginning of a different relationship with yourself. One where you turn towards what you have been avoiding. One where you stay with yourself rather than leave. One where over time you begin to experience something very different. Not as an idea, but as a felt sense. I'm here with myself. I'm not leaving. And I belong to me. If you'd like help learning to belong to yourself, visit my website, book a free discovery call. Let's see what's possible.